Welcome to the We Are One podcast. I'm Olivia, your host. Each week, I sit down with survivors from the Independent Fundamental Baptist Church to shine light on the abuse, the hypocrisy, and the truth that has existed behind closed doors. These stories matter. These voices matter. And together, we're breaking the silence. Before we begin, please note all individuals discussed in this podcast are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Trigger warning. This episode may include descriptions of abuse, trauma, and other sensitive topics. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the We Are One podcast. I'm your host, Olivia. To continue with my series on Jack Patterson and just the Reclamation Ranch, I have a really amazing guest that I to love and just learn to know so much about you. And I'm really excited for the listeners out there to really get to know who you are. Some people may know her or you. Some people may know you, but just in case they don't, this is Jennifer. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So I want to say, just because I feel like I want to start this episode off with, there's a lot of times in this podcast journey of mine where certain things happen and I'm like, okay, that's an answered prayer. And the day that Jennifer messaged me was one of those moments in this journey. You had messaged me and I remember opening it up and I was like, I have hit the jackpot. I have hit the jackpot, literally. And when we talked on the phone, oh my God, I think we talked for like 2.5 hours, like literally. And there was just so much that like both of us can relate to because of the IFB. And that was something that, my mission is for this podcast is for anyone that was like born and raised in the Independent Fundamental Baptist movement, whether you're still in it and you're like trying to figure out what is real, how to like leave, because like once you leave, you lose everything.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things too. And so I appreciate that you have reached out to me. And again, there's so many other people that have been on this podcast that have reached out to me and has helped so many others. So I know that your story is going to touch so many people's lives. And we are doing multiple parts because there's a lot of parts to who you are. So to start off, can you take us back to the earliest church memory? What stands out the most when you think of like those first experiences?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely want to say too, it was the same for me when I connected with you. I came across your podcast, what I would call a serendipitous moment. And I just so happened to be doing some research on my mom's husband, Jack Patterson, and connected with the We Are One podcast and a lot of amazing men and women that have been through so much. And so when we connected, it was amazing to get the opportunity to know that your mission and your heart is to not be unkind, but to bring light to things, to speak truth to matters, and to realize that if our voices don't speak up, we are going to continue to see this major shift where people don't know how to get out, or they don't know what to do when they get out, or they're walking in trauma. And so anything that I can do to make a difference, both with my story and unfortunately or fortunately with who I know. I was raised independent, fundamental, King James only Bible Baptist. I grew up under the names of Peter Ruckman. I was very familiar. Our pastor was Don Mangus. And of course, Pensacola Christian College was pushed. Bill Rice Ranch was pushed. So John Rice was a huge impact into those arenas. My earliest memory, unfortunately, is with Peter Ruckman. Being in our church, we had multiple revivals a year with him. When he came, we dropped life. Like, you were in church, didn't matter if you had homework, didn't matter if you had sickness, you were there if the doors were open. It was pretty normal for most of the kids to sit in the front. I was maybe 5 or 6 when this earliest memory, and Peter Ruckman, for those that don't know, is out of Florida with Sword of the Lord, Ruckman Bible Institute. He is a known narcissist. He is a known white supremacist. He is a known woman hater, woman cheater, all the things. I didn't know it at the time, but even in my little 5-year-old heart, I knew something about this man was off. He was allowed to say things in our pulpit that I was like, I don't think you're supposed to say that in church. But equally, he drew a picture of people burning. And when I say burning, I am talking about physically shaped human beings on fire in this ravine. And he continued to berate and scream and yell about how horrific we were as human beings, how horrific teenagers were, and how children come out inerrantly sinful. And I remember the analogy that he gave, and I remember it so much so that I still have nightmares about it, of saying, if you and your family were to leave this revival tonight, and you as a young person, 5, 6, 7 years old, are at the age of accountability, although no one could ever describe that, were to leave here and be in a car wreck, if your family died, your parents would go to heaven and you would go straight to hell. It didn't end there. It was not only would you go straight to hell, your body would be on fire and worms would eat you, and you would see your mom and dad up in heaven, and they would be trying to get to you and you would be trying to get to them, and you would be screaming, but you would be in eternal torment and burn forever while they were in heaven with Jesus. Do you want that? And I don't know about you, but I don't know any 5 or 6 year old that watches a scary movie or a Halloween movie that doesn't go, I don't want that. Let's get rid of the dolls. Let's get rid of the monsters. And I'm sitting there going, well, let's get rid of hell. So I made my first decision somewhere in that age category of 5 or 6, purely out of fear.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you brought that up because, I've said on like previous episodes about, my salvation story in a way. I was like 5 or 6. I have like the most basic IFB salvation story you could get. Maybe because I'm like a basic bitch, maybe. I don't know.
Yep.
But even at 5 and 6, still, chose the basic life. But no, I remember like full wholeheartedly like the fear of in Sunday school of fire and burning, and or if you leave church tonight, kind of like how you said, your parents will be up there but you won't be. Like, I remember that, and I remember asking my mom, like, no joke, I remember like she had put me to bed and I said to her, Mommy, I don't want to go to hell.
Right.
Mom was like, oh my gosh. And like, as any parent, like, wow, like as a Christ follower, when your child accepts Jesus Christ, like that's fine. And I've had this conversation too. I don't want my future kids to ever feel like the fear base. Like, yes, you can tell them that they are sinners saved by grace because that's truth. That's the biblical truth part of it. But
Absolutely.
but the fear of burning and hell and all that, like that is just a propaganda to fear and control.
Yes.
And that's just something that I've had to learn to like let go from, like, like just like bitterness or anything like that. Like, yeah, like I don't hold that against like certain people, like Sunday school teachers and stuff, because that's what they,
Indoctrinated as well.
yeah. And like with Ruckman, you
Yeah.
have him who, like, kind of like how you said, is like a well-known narcissist and a lot of, I mean, racist and just, oh my gosh, like the list goes on. But he feeds off that. Like, it
Oh,
makes him feel so
is
secure.
that? Yes.
And the reason why is because so many other people have heard that and have either given him credit or they like run with it. And then it's just like, and again, that's kind of like how the IFB is. I honestly feel like they all have a secret binder of sermons that they just pass around because they're all kind of the same. They all, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, and
If you look at Song of Solomon, I believe, or Ecclesiastes, he talks about nothing new under the sun. And the one thing I have learned about the IFB as I have gotten out is they've borrowed a lot of things from a lot of places. including all different forms of Baptists, some charismatic, even some ancient things that come from, before Christ and before we have the Christian method, but they're tools of control, they're tools of indoctrination, they're fear tactics. All of those are things that come from if you're familiar at all with psychology, the will of control. Those things are on there. When you look at the IFB movement, especially those of us that were in it before the new IFB kind of emerged.
I don't even the fact that a new IFB even exists.
I've heard it termed from my family is it's a lighter version. It's not as mean. We're less strict. We wear pants, or some people, and I'm like, woo, you wear pants, but you're still mean and hateful. But it is a form of psychological control. And so if you think about a child's brain at the age of 5, what we know in science and what is proven by science and psychology now is that does latch onto a child's brain. And that fear not only connects their decision to be saved, but it connects how they view God. So at the age of 5, I didn't view God as a loving God. I didn't even view Jesus dying on the cross or whatever that looks like. I didn't view it as loving. I viewed it as I was bad, and this God is real angry at me and is going to fry my ass if I don't make a decision. So what child to be loved by a parent or to be loved by a father figure is not going to do what they have to survive? So you're beginning basic survival, fight, fright, or freeze skills at a kindergarten level and sometimes earlier.
Yeah. I mean, definitely for those who were born and raised in the IFB, you're in the nursery.
Yes.
Yeah, and so
I have sinned and I'm sitting there going, I just want to be fed and have my diaper changed. Seriously.
I want to know, when is snack time? My favorite was eating whales and goldfish. That was my favorite thing.
We had Cheerios.
Yeah. And so, the kind of to bounce off what you just said, about kind of your views and stuff like that for God, and how you were saying how, okay, he's angry and I don't want him to be angry. Did you ever have that feeling like you had to be a good Christian girl?
Yes. So one of the unique situations in my IFB circle, because we were independent, I have done a lot of research, and the preacher that we had supposedly didn't really follow anyone per se. You know how a lot of times you'll hear this person learned their lessons from XYZ. I know with Goddard, he thought Goddard was a little harsh. But yet we used a lot of their thought process. But primarily we used a lot of Bill Rice. And I say that to say there was this teaching, not necessarily always direct, but underlying teaching of, while we believe in salvation through faith and not works, everything was about the outside. And so I saw the Bible as a book of no's and don'ts. I saw my church and my school as this little bubble where I had to be the perfect Christian girl, because a couple of different things would happen if I didn't. I was sinning and backsliding. The minute I sin and backslide, not only does that tear me away from my relationship with God, but unfortunately, it tore me away from my relationship with my mom specifically, which we will get into in later podcasts. Then it also tore up my relationship with my surrounding church family, because we only had church family. So if I was doing what the other little kids were doing, and we were all doing God's lessons and rules, then everything was great. The minute I did it, someone tattled. And then that was shame on me. And I was considered one of the good kids because I did the tattling, because I was trained to do that. I was trained that sin is done in secret, and you go tell your mom, who goes tells their mom, and then you no longer have friends. And in a small church where there's maybe at any given time, 5 to 7 in your age group, that's not great for you. Because of it, I deal with OCD, I deal with perfectionism. I am an empathetic person. I was created by God as an empath. And that was shut down because of this perfectionism and this having to do everything perfectly. I berated myself if I didn't have a 4.0 in school. And with a Becca, that's not the easiest thing to accomplish. Equally, I was a female. And so there were certain things that I was expected, even as a young child, to get right. I was to wait on others. I was to be seen and not heard. I was to obey without question. I was to learn the girly things. I was to read my Bible. I was to pray. And when I would speak up, even at a young age, about depression or about sadness, it was, well, you just need to trust Jesus. You just need to pray. So from that very beginning stage, and this continued up until my 30s, it was heavily taught to me that I needed to dress a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way. I needed to read my entire Bible throughout the year. I needed to dress in a way that did not cause boys to sin. I needed to confess my sins in public. I needed to, memorize all my Sunday school verses. I needed to say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. We weren't allowed to call adults by their names. It was Mr. and Mrs. or brother and sister, which is so cringy. Can I just tell you, when you're around someone that gives off that vibe of being an unsafe person and you're sitting there calling them brother so-and-so, it does something. You're taught obedience to adults, which is the most fertile ground for abuse to take place.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is. I've said this on numerous episodes. I hated the whole brother thing. Like, I looking up like a 6-year-old looking up at a 70-year-old, like, hey brother, blah blah blah. It's like, no, like, it's so weird. And I think again, it's just like like kind of you said, just an open ground with controlment and obedience. Now when with this obedience that you and I both have experienced, because in the IFB that is everything. Definitely as a woman, and a girl who was born and raised, like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, like when you realized, okay, this is what I have to do. This is what if I don't, was there ever a time where though you question authority and you realize like, that was not allowed?
So that's a complicated and nuanced question, but yes, I would say as early as the age of 12, I started to have a lot of questions because there was a lot of hypocrisy. There was a lot of do as I say, not as I do. There was a lot of because I said so, and you're not allowed to ask, whether it's about a rule or if it's about God, or if it's about authority, or if it's about why are we learning this in school? This doesn't seem right. Or why does this Bible verse contradict this one? And unfortunately, speaking up did some damage to me mentally and emotionally. I remember at one point talking about how excited I was that I didn't want Jesus to come back, because of course we believed in the literal, all of that. And I didn't want Jesus to come back because I wanted to drive a car at 16. So mind you, I'm under 16 years old. All I can think about is, hey, I want my license. And I remember sitting in my car and being told, well, that's kind of a worldly thought. And while that might be normal, you would be better off in heaven with Jesus than driving a car. Or your thoughts need to be more on soul winning. Or what about the people that might die in a car wreck if they don't know Jesus, and you were more concerned about driving your car? And I'm like, what the hell? All I wanted to do was put a key in the ignition and drive my little Chevette that backfired. I mean, that was it. It had nothing to do with loving Jesus. Equally, I had mentioned at the age of 12, it was shortly after I had begun dealing with being sexually abused. And I was still not sharing that with anyone, but I had mentioned that I wanted to go to school for psychology because I wanted to be a therapist. No one thought to ask me why. Instead, I was met with, well, psychology is sin, therapy is sin. Here's a Bible, it has all your answers. If you need anything outside of that, it's a heart issue, it's a Jesus issue. I'm sitting here today telling you I'm very fortunate to be alive because of therapy and because of psychology, and even, dare I say, because of medicine. So yeah, beginning to question those things. Why can't I wear pants? Why does this girl get to wear pants and she loves Jesus? Well, they're backslidden, or they are another word for it, liberal. Like Southern Baptists were considered liberal because they listened to Christian contemporary music. I asked questions about music. I asked questions, why can mom and dad take the sheet off of the TV? Now, I'm aging myself. We had a TV on the ground with the knobs and a cable box. And they would literally, when preachers would come in and preach about the devil box, would be convicted because other people in the church were convicted, they would cover it with a sheet. But guess what? The minute the kids went to bed, the sheet came off and they watched whatever they wanted. The kids went to bed and my dad watched porn. But that was okay because they were adults, or they would hear a song from the 50s and be like, oh, well, that was a safe song, but we're not going to listen to any of them because it's a gateway to the mind. And none of that made sense to me. Turned out that it was not good for me to ask questions because I would find out I was intelligent. It was not good for me to read other books or to talk to other people because I would realize that math wasn't mathing correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've always been the type to question things. I will be the first to say I never cared for authority because most of the time I called you out on your bluff and people didn't like that. Definitely me as a teenager coming in the youth group, and I've been open about how I went through a party stage. I was wild. I did things that nobody should be doing.
So because we didn't even have youth group. It was taught that youth group was, again, a gateway to rebellion and sex and rock and roll and drugs. So instead, we had to sit in church. We couldn't go to a place called Kings Island because the names of the rides. We finally got to go once or twice, but a preacher actually came in and preached against the names of the rides, like the King Cobra and the Beast and the Son of Beast. Because the first cart said 666 right across it, and we were going straight to hell down the hill. So, I mean, I can't even imagine getting to question those things. Like for me, that was not an option.
Yeah. No, and I know there's so many people out there that totally can relate to what you're saying. I mean, I can relate to a certain extent. Now, I never had anyone tell me about Kings Island. I mean, we went to Cedar Point for youth group, but that just shows how extreme the IFB can be and how they can get so superior in their thinking process, where when you're a kid, you're like, well, that has to be right because it's all I've ever known, right?
Yes.
When then you have that one kid in the youth group or in the youth child that's like, ding, this doesn't make any sense. And then they don't like that.
No, especially as a female.
Yeah, because they know you're right. I can't tell you how many times I have thought about now as an adult, messaging quite a few people I know and just call them out for everything I know. You know what I mean? I just want to send them an email and be like, you got me. Congratulations. You got me for 5 years believing this and that, but I'm so much better off not to.
I'm growing, and I am almost 50 years old, and I'm proud to say that as a survivor. But I can tell you, it has genuinely taken me 49, I'll even give it 48 and a half years to find out that A, I have a voice, B, I can use it And see, it was shut down. My brain was shut down. My mind was taken from me, my ability to think for myself. And so, good for you, even in that younger generation, going, you know what? Yeah, I was a little bit rebellious, is the word they like to use, but you were honest in youth group. You spoke your voice and you
Well,
spoke.
yeah, it's like,
Right.
okay, like guys can wear, like, for like my church, guys can wear sweatpants where we can literally see your imprint, but girls can't because they can see where our butt cheeks are. Like, well, I don't understand that.
Because
Or like we have people who are the music directors, pants are so tight where literally the whole congregation
question.
knows what size you are. But
Yep.
then a girl gets kicked out of the choir because her boobs are too big. I don't like,
Something that you can't control. Yes. And I went through that.
hypocrisy. Yeah. Did you guys ever go through that? I call it era because I guess some people don't do this anymore, but where they had like a bin and like if your clothes were inappropriate, you had to go change.
We were sent home. There
Okay.
were times that we got sent home. For me, I've always been chunky and bigger, and that's okay. It's okay now. That was not a good thing in the IFB, just so you know. The rumors of that are also very true. However, I remember developing in fourth grade. And after that, it was constantly on me to minimize and to make sure my tops were super high up, or if a certain color accentuated, even if it was loose. Trying to go swimming in a bra, a tank top, and or a bathing suit and a t-shirt and culottes. Let me just explain, we're lucky I didn't drown. And equally, how is that modest when you come up out of the water looking like you have a scuba suit on and you can see all the things? And I'm going, I would have been better off, at least put me in like a surf suit or something. At least then it's not clinging and acting all, hey, look at me, I look like a drowned rat, but equally, here's my t-shirt.
So I know quite a few girls who were really tall and they could not wear one piece because their torsos were too long. So I mean, like, no joke, they'd be like, okay, well then wear a t-shirt over your tankini.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
go shirtless.
Yeah. Boys can go shirtless, wear shorts, and
absolutely.
But girls,
not on there.
Yeah. You might as well just wear a turtleneck, girls, if you're out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know what's crazy is, and this is something I've wanted to say, maybe I've said it, I don't know. I speak a lot on my podcast, so maybe I have said it. If that mentality was true, where what we wear is really what causes anything bad to happen, then say that to the girl who was wearing a turtleneck and a long denim skirt that was almost to her ankles and barely see anything, and then say that to their face, because it's not true. If someone wants to do harm, they will do harm because they are psycho. And they're not.
Let's be fair. If that were a true thing, let's talk about all the young men that haven't come forward yet that were fully dressed and were equally taken advantage of.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are holes in the ideologies of the IFB and actually a lot of evangelicals at this point that are coming to light and falling apart. Like,
well, we see it like in the headlines. Like, there's so many people out there that are like doing things, and it's like, dude, it's been there, but like people are so blinded, right? And then unless it truly happens, I've always said this, unless it truly happens to either you or someone very close to you, no matter, you can do this in any day-to-day life. This isn't just an IFB thing, but it's very important to say. Then like you don't understand, but then when you have something happening, it hits your core to like no other. And I just don't understand how so many, I guess, older people, like parents and grandparents, that are sitting in the pews as of today, that know that their pastor or their youth pastor or someone that they have funded money to or whatever, and they're just like, what, it's his church, it's the man's church, so that's what. And it's like,
the devil's after him, it's just a lie, that wouldn't really happen.
Or I've heard this too, and I've heard this from a lot of older men, where they say, well, it's their church if that's the way they want to do it. And it's like, okay, well then you might as well then just join with them because you're agreeing to it, you know?
It's like saying, well, if, that's their bank. So if they don't want to secure it for it to not get robbed and people shot at gunpoint, that's on them.
Yeah.
Is it like, yeah.
I don't understand. And like we talked about the John Rice and all of that to come, which will be coming later.
Yes, stay tuned.
And kind of like what you were saying, like the mindset also of always being there, sick or not, if someone's there, definitely the Bible, you are not missing that. Like you better come on. If your arm has fallen off, you better be still there.
If you're not throwing up and running a fever or like chicken pox covered, then you will be at church.
Be there. Yeah. Yes. Even to the moms who just had a baby 3 days ago,
absolutely. The word of God. Absolutely.
Because they can't having that involvement the way that we've both been on it, like you just said. Yeah. Being there, how would you say that really shaped your, I guess, everyday life in the IFB?
Sure. Well, one, it was all I knew. I can tell you that for those 18 years up to the time that I was shipped off to Pensacola, we were in church every Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night. After Sunday night church, it was usually some kind of fellowship for the adults. Wednesday night prayer meetings, Thursday night visitation, some parent or form was out, and then equally revival time. On top of that, we were not allowed, at least the majority of the families. There were some families that thankfully did this differently, but not a lot. We were not allowed to associate or hang out with or socialize with anyone outside of our bubble. So even when we weren't in church, if we were socializing, it was church people. And my school was a church school. So if we were socializing, I was genuinely socializing with students and teachers. So there was no room to breathe. There was no room. They permeated my life so much that they actually had a part in what I wore, the chores I had, things I said. So I was not allowed to get contacts because a good friend of my mom and stepdad's told them that it would make me vain. I was not allowed to name it. I couldn't do it, especially if it was popular, because it would cause me to stumble. I couldn't listen to Christian music because other kids couldn't listen to Christian music. There were certain cartoons we couldn't watch because a preacher would come in and speak. I remember a preacher coming in and speaking on the evils of the Christmas tree. So one Christmas, we had Christmas presents, dang it, but we didn't have a Christmas tree because we were worshiping a tree. But how that affected me was severe anxiety. And also I put it before my own, it became so permeated. I remember coming out of Pensacola, because at Pensacola, I don't know if you know, but you also are in church constantly. You have chapel every day. You have speakers come in. You have these Vesper things. It's a nightmare. But the first time I missed church, I actually laid on the floor of my first apartment and I sobbed because I thought Jesus was going to kill me, because missing church when the doors were open was right up there with taking communion in sin. That's bringing death on you. And even to this day, it's funny, I have the most incredible home church, and they advocate for you to take a break. But there will be moments I will go to get up and I'm like, I don't feel well. I'm going to stay home today. And my body says to stay home. But we've been taught that our bodies are not trustworthy and our bodies are sinful. So it's like, oh no, you're going to get up and go anyways. And I have had to unlearn that and rewire my brain that Jesus doesn't love me based on if I'm in a building or not. Jesus doesn't love me if I go to church. It has nothing to do with that. And so it made a huge impact because it took well over 40 years for me to be able to calm my nervous system and be like, okay, you know what? I'm going on vacation and it will be okay. And that I can love Jesus in nature, even without my Bible, even without, like, I don't have to crack open my Bible. I know this is blasphemy to some people, but it's a true statement. I don't have to crack open my Bible to commune with God, the God that I know now, and the God that loves me, and the God that created me. But I was taught that if I wasn't in those church doors, something was wrong. I was wrong.
And that mindset too, that like, and like, we've all heard this, that you have to be different from the outside world, because if not, then like, you might as well just be them. And like the mindset of like not surrounding yourself only with IFB people, like you said, you went to school there, so then those were your friends. You didn't have an outside support, I guess you could say.
Not at all. We were even cut off from family.
Yeah. Definitely like family who are not a part, nope, cut them out, and that's something that I can kind of relate to in a way. Like my family didn't like cut completely out, but we weren't around them as much. It was only like big holidays, how would you say when you, because like for me, always got told you need to be separated from the world, which they take that verse so out of context. Because like my thing is this, okay, if that's true, then you better go get your donkey, because people aren't driving Bentleys and and Teslas, or
that's right.
Jesus didn't have a private plane that you're buying with your congregation money, like how
only help the people in your congregation, not the person sleeping in their car or on the street corner,
or opposing that you have a food bank for the whole public, but then only your people on Sundays and Wednesdays.
Preach, sister.
Like it's just like how like the hypocrisy is so big, and like if people are not seeing it now, I don't know if they ever will. But
you're right.
When you get told, definitely as from a child down to an adult, that the outside world is so dangerous. Don't get me wrong, it's dangerous to a certain extent, because there is some wackadoodles in the world, but there's more wackadoodles in the church.
Yes, ma'am.
Like I've always said, more than likely the statistics of a drag queen versus a pastor molesting a child, it's always a pastor. Like
have you seen, I have looked at some of those statistics, and it is so staggeringly different. The chance of being molested is, I think this last statistic that I saw, don't quote me on this, is higher than 75% of being molested or abused in the church walls before a drag queen reading a banned book, or a transgender person or a queer person spending time with your child. The only agenda they have is to love them as they are for who they are, not take advantage of them, and equally teach them, I'm the boss, I'm the authority, don't tell.
Yeah. No, and I will die on that hill. Like more than likely it's always the pastor, and that, I mean, it's just proven. Like literally that just like fact speaking, because there's so many, I mean, there's so many headlines every single day. Youth leader, music director. I mean, like, there's one that I'm going to eventually cover on my podcast with, like, there was an FBI raid, like, literally 2 miles from my house. Guess what? It was a music director. He was a piano player, and he was an alumni from Hiles. Like, come on. Like, we can't be blind to it. But that mindset that the outside is so dangerous, how did that affect your ability, like, once you got out, to, like, form with people, like, in the outside world? I know a lot of people say that, like, when they got into the real world, oh my gosh, one, their education was horrible in the way of, like, for college, like real life college, they were not equipped for it, but they also did not know how to, one, get close, communicate with people, and just do the normal day-to-day life, because they always thought this person is bad, this person's going to go to hell, this person's going to like this and this, and it just completely shadowed then making a friend and being a light and soul winning.
Yeah. That's a big question. And I know that since we're doing a multiple part, that we are going to speak a lot to that coming up. So I love how you kind of strung that in there of like, hey, so I'm going to give you a short answer and keep everybody on their toes.
We love that.
Do well with it. Okay. First answer. Second, I found when I came out that I had severe imposter syndrome as a woman. I never felt good enough. I never felt old enough. I never felt mature enough. I never felt capable to make a decision. Simple things like going to the grocery gave me anxiety because I felt like I was going to do it wrong and not honor God with my money. Um, Dating for, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on here as far as language, but dating was a cluster bomb. That's what I'll say. Use whatever choice words you want to use. Um, and I messed it up really badly. What I learned growing up in the IFB and the way that I was mentally messed with, the way I was physically messed with, the way I was blamed for those things, it taught me to survive. And equally, a little leak being of the LGBTQ family, it taught me to lie about who I was because I didn't want to go to hell. It taught me to do what everybody said do. So, like the boys, pick the boys, go to Pensacola so that you can get your MRS degree. Go to Pensacola, but only marry someone that is in ministry because Jesus needs you to serve, not be a career woman. Oh, and equally, let's not find out how smart you are. Okay. So I will say 3 divorces, physical abuse, mental abuse, rape, all of those things play into my life outside of the bubble. When I got out of Pensacola, I was not prepared for the real world. And I'll be honest with you, some of the worst abuse was from a pastor I married from Pensacola. And some of the worst decisions I made equally were because I didn't know how to function. I didn't know I had a voice, and all I wanted was to be loved, Olivia. I was willing to sacrifice my voice, my thoughts, my mind, my soul, and my body to be loved. Because no matter what I did, it was never good enough. It was never good enough for God. And honestly, it was never good enough. I hate to say this, and equally you understand this, but it was never good enough for my mom or my stepdad. I remember very vividly as a teenager being told, listen, as long as you're right with God, our relationship is good. But the minute your relationship with God is broken, that breaks our relationship too. When you sin against me, you sin against God. So in order to fix it between God, you have to fix it between me. And it was almost as if they were on it. I don't know that it was meant that way, but in my young teenage mind, that was, we're on equal playing field. So in order for me to have a good relationship with my mom, I had to have a good relationship with God, which in turn led me to seeking validation at all costs from my mom, in order, because in my eyes, if mom loved me, I must be doing okay with Jesus. When mama was proud of me for my Jesus decisions, life was okay. And so stepping out of that caused my body to go into shock.
Yeah. And I will say, I know a lot of people can relate. I know firsthand, I'm thinking of a specific person now that can totally relate to that mindset that, well, if mom is proud of me, mom is happy, then that means I'm good with God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mindset. I am thankful that my mom and I have always had like more of a open heart, open door policy. But that mentality of feeling like you're not good enough, I can totally relate. Like, I know that stems from my dad, because as a girl who, like, I'm the only girl, so as a daughter who looks up to this person and you're like, oh, that's my hero, like, oh, like, you're like the Prince Charming, right, blah blah blah, and then you realize, like, no, he's a monster, literally a monster, and I've been open about that.
Yeah.
It crushes your soul to the point where when you are in the IFB and you hear like purity culture and you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to go get your MRS degree. you know, I've talked about like where I originally thought I was going to go to Heartland and just become a pastor's wife, which
Yep.
you imagine. I would have, oh my gosh, no.
Listen, I'm going to be preaching and speaking, just not
Yeah.
the IFB. So watch out.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, I'm like, I look back and I'm like, whew, you know, it's funny because like you make all these plans and then God's like, yeah, let me.
Yeah, it's
I'm
funny.
glad that he did for me. And it's unfortunate that, you know, it didn't happen for you in the way that like you should have been your authentic self, right? And didn't have to worry about these things. And there's so many people out there that truly are probably married as of right now that
Yeah.
hate their life and are miserable. They've lost their voice. They don't even, you know, they don't put themselves together anymore because they don't care about themselves. They've let everything go. Why? Because they thought, and they might still think that that's what they're supposed to do. And let me tell you, if you're a woman out there, or if you're a male too, like
Yes, both ways.
don't settle. Like, no, it's not true biblical, first off.
No, it is not. And I will die on that hill.
And it's just, it's awful. And I mean, I witnessed that with my mom, like married for, you know, 27, 28 years. And the idea of, well, this is what I thought was right, this is whatever. And it's just like, man, like I look at my mom and I'm like, you know, you've been through a lot of things that a lot of people don't know. And I look at her and I'm like, man, I would have, I ran. And but it proves too also that once you're left with strength only,
yes,
we'll show you how strong. And like Jennifer, I honestly believe that like you're another prime example of that because of other things that we will obviously cover in different parts, because there's a lot of parts to but you know, talking about purity culture and the mindset of like the MRS degree and you need to do this, and like I'm glad though you said too, you have to marry someone in ministry. You can't marry a cop, you can't marry that. But it's funny because it's like, but we respect cops, we respect our politicians, we respect this, whatever, but don't marry, you can't marry them. It's like, what? Like, God forbid I want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a nurse, but I'm saying God forbid I be a nurse. And I always think too, for the people who are nurses and stuff, like I'm glad they are in the IFB. Like stood their ground on it. But
no, they're allowed to be nurses because I was allowed to go to nursing school. I just didn't choose it. Do you want to know why? I was told that could be used on the mission field. I was told I could only get a degree in something that could be used in Christian ministry or the mission field. Pastor's wife, not pastor, pastor's wife, nurse, or teacher.
Teacher. Everything is teacher. Oh my gosh. I know quite a few people who are in their 20s that go and get their
homeschool
teaching degree. It's not even legit. It's a teacher.
No, ma'am.
Might as well
honorary doctorates really help to be discussed.
But talking about purity culture, and like I've talked about this too quite a few times, and there's a lot of episodes and there's a lot of, you know, just things on it. So I don't want to like ponder on too much. But with purity culture that stood out the most to you, that hindered you in the most way that you want to bring awareness about?
Yeah, purity culture for my generation, anyways, the purity rings and all of that was almost more of a evangelical Southern Baptist kind of thing. So we were not part of that. Purity culture in my world was don't do it. You're going to die. You're going to get a disease. You're going to get
all I'm thinking of is Mean Girls. Just
don't
do it.
Just don't do it.
I'm going to put the clip in here so then people will know.
Please, that will be funny. I love that movie. But equally, like for puberty, for boys and girls, it wasn't really discussed. You just kind of were stuck with it. But the impact of purity culture for me, in my strict IFB world, was it is always the girl's fault. It is shameful if you do something. It's shameful for the girl. And what did you do to cause that male to sin? I could give you example after example. I won't. And again, I know that we're going to talk about this later, but for me, it was my stepfather. And equally, I want to be.
And when you say stepfather, is that someone different than
my mom's husband?
Papa?
Yes. So my mom was married 22 years to a man who I did not find out until I was 18 was not my biological father. They lied to me about it. But he played the role. Yeah, I told you there's stuff to unpack. Um, However, he thought it would be okay to take advantage of me.
I just like want to like make sure. So then like people
yes,
are
no, that's a great, yeah. So even though I grew up with him as my father, I feel like when you take your child's innocence, you lose that right. And then equally to find out he wasn't my biological father, adds.
I didn't want actually anyone to tie that in with
and I don't want them to tie that into Jack. I will say he did not marry my mom until I want to say 28.
Okay.
So he would like to be called my stepfather and or papa, but that's for another story, another day. This man,
another voicemail.
Another voicemail, yes. Oh my God. This man.
I just like cringe.
It is. But I held in what happened to me. Not only from my stepfather, but some other family members. And when I came out at 18 about these things, mom did believe me. I want to give her that credit and I want to give her that grace, but she couldn't handle the information. So she went to the pastor, and that's where my life fell apart. I was pulled in. I was told it was my fault because I wore a nightgown. Now, mind you, I was only 12. I was also told that because there was no penetration, it was not sexual abuse. I was told that I made it up. I was told that I wanted attention. I was told that I'd always been extra. And equally, I was handed a Bible and told that bitterness was the root of sin. And if I did not forgive him, it was on me. And then I was told the one thing that damaged my life. I was told that if my parents got divorced, that would be on me and I would answer for it in heaven. So I can't tell you what holding that in for 6 years and then having that happen, and then to turn around and go to a Christian college where a therapist, this was the year before they got rid of the psychology department, but a teacher there basically told me that, again, that because it wasn't penetration, it wasn't that bad and I needed to just get over it. And that equally other family members were younger, so that was more exploratory and normal, and I shouldn't have let it happen. And so purity culture for me was just that. It's always the girl's fault. I am to be ashamed. I let it happen, and I have spent thousands of dollars in therapy realizing that my body is my body and you took advantage of that and you had no right.
Yeah.
So that's purity culture in my world. And yeah. Equally, we were taught, I will tell you, I don't know what's taught in your generation of IFB, but I can't tell you the number of preachers that stood in that pulpit and said, women, you keep yourself skinny, you keep yourself looking good for your man, and you put it out when he wants it, whether you have a headache or not, because if you don't give it to him, he'll take it and or find it somewhere else. But when you get married, it's his to take. So
and I never heard that. And trust me, no, I will say that I've never heard it like that in that way.
That's right.
You know, I think that a lot of people though that I know who are older that I'm friends with, just being in the church and stuff, did. So they had that mindset, and like when they got out, that was something like they worked on. But I personally have never like heard that in that way. Now I will say I heard about like being thin and like always, you know, looking good and like making sure your body is, you know, the temple. Like
it's got,
but what's funny is you have men who look like Jack Patterson and other people, and they tell people they need to lose weight, women.
Yep, women.
But then
So-
they can look like Humpty Dumptys all day. It's like the hypocrisy. And again, it just goes back to in the beginning of what I'm saying. Like how legit are we taking the Bible in the IP? You know, like if so, then I'm gonna call it this, I'm gonna call it that. And then they can't take it though, because they know we're right. So what do? This is what something Pastor Paul said on last season when he said, what do they do when they can't like handle the truth? They start, and it's like ruining your character, who you are, whatever. And I have experienced that firsthand. There are so many people that I know who changed my diapers, who have known me my whole life, who know my heart deep down that I'm a good person and just want to help people. But what do? They can't handle the truth. So what do? My podcast is a joke. I'm the Antichrist, which I don't even know if they don't even know what the Antichrist is. Like that makes no sense. And then you have people, grown women who are in their 60s and 70s, y'all, are screaming about why people are friends with me. Like that, what in the mean girl is that? Like that's not Christ love. But what do? They do that. It's like a cancel culture, like in the way.
Yes, it is.
And then they talk about other people. It's just like, oh, I don't understand.
Ignore the words of Jesus the entire time. And that is where the crux of my heart is in sharing and being silent no more, is I am relearning scripture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book called Better Ways to Read the Bible by Zach Lambert that's changing my views.
Yeah.
But I'm realizing that the Jesus we grew up with in the IS.
Oh, it's so not. Yeah. I've always said that. Like I've said that I think for the past 3 years. Like
yes,
if I would have known the God that I know now, the Jesus that I know now, when I was little, like I'm jealous of like when I go to like church, I'm so jealous of the youth that's like able to jump up, have drums on the stage, are allowed to wear pants to church. I'm like,
shorts.
I for that. Like you're telling me, little boy, that you're in your pajama pants? I would have died for that. But give me some comfies. I literally have sweatpants on, y'all. Like I live in.
I'm here with it.
I live in comfy, so it's like I'm like, oh, like I'm like so mad, but then it's like, but I'm glad where I'm at now, because then like my other, my future kids and their generations will be able to have that, and hopefully. And now I will say this: I don't think the IFB will ever die, because there is seriously too much of like.
Sure, and they need. My partner and I talk about this all the time. When you are someone, whether it's your trauma or whether it's personality, it could be any number of things, but there are people that survive only in a black and white world. And IFB is a set of rules, and it's easier to live by a set of rules than to speak your truth. It's easier to hide. And unfortunately, it is a safe, I'm just going to say, it's a safe place for bad people and for predators and for people that are narcissistic. I think it is full of narcissistic people that think they are closer to God than they are. They're checking off boxes, but the scripture talks about man looks on the outside, but God looks on the heart. And here's the thing. I think they quote that verse a little too often, because God looks on the heart, but does he see Jesus? Because God says the greatest commandments are to love the Lord God and to love others as yourself. And these people, they love themselves pretty well, but they don't love others.
Yeah. And, kind of like to go back to what we were talking about also with the way that they want you to feel inside, broken down, like you need them. Like,
yes.
Like you just need to be in church 7 days a week, because if not, then like you're not good. But also to go back, also kind of what you were saying with like the way that you look and body and stuff like that as a woman specifically, hearing that from a man is just whatever.
Right.
But as a kid and a teenager and a very young adult, hearing certain things, it changes everything. Even if you get out, there's times where I will have a dress on and I have to tell myself it's okay. Like I'm okay wearing this, right? It's about my,
because your body is in that traumatized.
Yeah. It's very hard to get out of. But how would you say like that, like would you say that hurt you more in a way, or was there anything else that hurt you, like when they talked about your body or whatever? Or did you just think, well, they're saying it to every other girl too, so it's not personally me?
I started doing diets as young as 8 years old with my mom because I was consistently made fun of by the men and the teenagers and other moms in my church for my weight. Okay. So I can tell you that being forced at 8 years old to start losing weight and constantly being made fun of for my weight, it not only traumatized me as a child, but it did damage mentally and physically. I ended up with a binge eating disorder. I ended up cutting. I ended up settling in relationships. I would sneak food the minute my parents would leave the house because I was embarrassed to eat in front of them. And honestly, I came to a place with God where I began to absolutely hate Psalm 139, where it said I was made well, because I was already hiding other secrets that I thought I could keep under control with Jesus, and everything was going to be fine. But my weight would never go away. And I kept asking God, were you mad at me? Are you punishing me? What is wrong with me that I can't be pretty? What is wrong with me that all the boys in the church like all the other girls, but everybody says I'm just the fat friend? And equally, to have grown men in the church make comments about how large my breasts were because of my weight, and watching my stepdad stand there and laugh and no one do anything about it. Or comments about, you would be a lot prettier if you were skinny. Or the comment of, as long as you're a big woman, your man is never going to be happy and they're going to step out on you. And then watching that happen. So my mom was on diets too. And when she would lose weight, he would be kind to her. The minute she gained weight, he would step out, whether TV or whatever that looked like back in the 80s and 90s. So I will tell you that kind of mentality still sticks with me. I still fight. I still find it very hard. I am loved and safer now than I have ever been. But equally, it is a constant battle of gremlins in my head telling me, and I'm realizing, you know what? God made me who he made me. And my body has been through some crazy trauma, mental, physical, sexual, and she is still fighting, and she is still alive, and she is good. She is not inherently bad. God did not create me that way. God created me for good and for a purpose. But it's taking a lot of money and a lot of therapy to get there. So,
Yeah. And talking about therapy too, it's very looked down on in IFB. It's horrible. You might as well say you're doing witchcraft. Like,
absolutely. It's white.
like it's
black, because
yeah. No, it's basic. It's basic.
Basic
Basic witchcraft.
You're welcome.
But, yeah. To say like you're doing therapy or anything like that is a big no in the IFB, because if you were having these thoughts, well, then you just must not be saved. Like,
okay. Absolutely. Or you're not reading your Bible enough. You're not hoping in Jesus enough. Yes, ma'am.
Or you're not tithing enough. It's like,
absolutely.
what would you say? Because I have a point in my life where I have realized I was not raised in a healthy home. Okay, I have a lot of pinpoints, but there was like a certain point where I was like, this is not healthy. What would you say that was like the moment for you?
That's a double-edged question. There's been a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the first time that I realized it was super unhealthy was after my abuse at like around 13 years old, and realizing that, understanding the story of our home and why my mom was not in the home in those moments those things happened. I know she was trying to get away from her own demons, but it left me unsafe. and finding out that this man had a history of being
Mm.
unsafe to women.
Wow.
That made me realize that something was off. And then I'll be really honest, it wasn't until the past couple of years, as I've done some genuine soul searching and therapy and deconstructing and reconstructing, for anybody that feels they need to know that, probably not in the way you want. I'm not saying that my mom didn't do her best with her story. My mom has a very traumatic story of her own. However, at some point, we become responsible for our stories and what we leave behind. And so it was in the last couple of years that I had to sit down and face the truth of what I was raised in was abuse. The spanking was physical abuse, the mental, and whether you want to blame it on the IFB, whether you want to blame it on I did my best and I didn't know, at some point, it's good to own that. And it's good to own, you know what? I didn't do well by you and I'm sorry. Instead of it constantly being, well, all this therapy is messing your head up and all these other churches are messing your head up and you need to get back in the King James and whatnot. But you know what? It is therapy that has caused my nervous system and my body to survive, because the rest of it almost killed me.
Yeah. And that is something I've said. Accountability can go a long way with survivors. I know there's so many people out there that said that if their pastor, their youth pastor, their deacon, the soul, Sunday school, like they would just say, "Hey, I'm so sorry." Like
Yeah,
I'm
just
sorry. Just
didn't.
acknowledging that I was wrong, which nobody in the IFB can do. It's
No,
always
cannot.
person's fault. And
Every
that's something that, I admire about my mom, because she was, she'll say, there's not a handbook for parenting. There's not a binder. You do this, you do that. But she has really come a long way in the way of saying, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. Back then. And even when we watched Let Us Pray, there was times where she was eat, swallowing the goldfish. She was like, yeah,
yes.
that should have never been a thing. I should have, spoken up. I should, and I'm like, the shoulds are a lot. I should, but she didn't. And this is why, the repercussions of that. And she's, done a long way. And I know quite a few people too, in their own deconstructing phase where, we had a lady on last season, Cindy, she was talking about how one of her daughters didn't talk to her for a while, just little things like that. And then it made her realize, take a look in the mirror and realize that I did something wrong. And, in the IFB, everyone's ego is so up there.
They want to justify everything. And so instead of saying, I'm sorry, it's, I did the best and I wish you would just see that. And that's gaslighting. It puts it back on the victim and says, well, you're too sensitive, you're too exaggerative. That's not what happened. But the truth of it is my body, my brain, my heart responded, reacted, and felt these things. These things happened to me, not to you. And what I would love more than anything is to hear, I'm sorry, not I'm sorry, but not I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. The second you add but in an apology, the apology's out the window because you're about to gaslight. And then I shut down personally when someone does that.
You're protect yourself and you shut down.
Yeah.
So no, I am with you on that. And unfortunately, I don't know as deeply embedded as my family is that I will see that.
Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting one for my dad. So we'll be in the club together, girl.
We'll be in the club together. That's all right.
And yeah, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, it shows that they need growth and they need prayers and they need whatever they need to do to figure out themselves. And we both, I know you'll cover a lot more on this and other parts, but we both are Christ followers. And so I will say, I always say God will judge them. I better be front row though with popcorn. That's all I gotta say.
That's extra butter.
So To kind of wrap up part one, after everything, you've gone through that we've covered so far on this episode,
Sure.
if you could speak to that little girl inside of you that was scared of burning in hell from the beginning of the episode, what would you tell her now?
You have a voice. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the biggest thing I could tell my little girl and all the little ones out there that I know are struggling in this is God created you, and God created you with his spirit, which means that gut instinct that you have, that knowing, that little oomph or that little run or that little, this feels safe. Listen to her or him. And here's why, because that is God in you. I believe with all of my heart, the more I study, the more I learn, that God created me with mind, body, soul, and emotions, not to make them bad, not because he needed to redeem them, but because I needed them to survive. And if I look back, and if this little girl had listened to the gut instincts that I have been given, I am very good at discernment. I am very good at wisdom, but they were shut down. And there's shame around that. So what I'm telling the little girl now is that was your God-given gift. That was your God-given instinct. And so you listen to her now. And if something is off, you listen to that. If something doesn't feel right, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's an effing duck. And we need to call it as such. Yeah. Just like that little girl in me says, that silence is the same thing as sitting back and watching someone commit a crime.
Absolutely. I always say that if you can't publicly stand out or stand up for what is wrong, then you might as well just commit the crime too.
Absolutely. And that
I actually find it actually worse than the person who's doing the actual crime.
I do too.
Because I just think that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Like, I could never stand or sit in a church pew, specifically because this podcast is about IFB, knowing certain things, and you still have people that are sitting in them Sunday, and it's like, oh my God, I don't understand. So I'm like, you might as well just do what they're doing, because you're, you know what I mean? I don't get it. I really don't. Something fundamentally has to be wrong with you.
I do. And that is why I'm beginning to speak up. And that is why, even in the fear that I face, the anxiety that I face of it, I'm going to speak my truth. Mm-hmm. Whether it's someone else's truth or not, that's not on me. Yeah. I know what I've seen. I know what I've heard. I know what I've been told not to tell. And those are clear signs that something is wrong.
Absolutely.
And my little girl, that it is okay to use her voice, and it is okay to not be silent, and it is okay to trust my gut. And that is my passion. That is my heart. That will be my heart moving forward in books and speaking engagements, is to listen and to trust and to speak up. It is worth the cost, and it will change your life physically, mentally, and spiritually. I genuinely believe that, because Jesus did not stand by. Jesus flipped tables, and it wasn't because they were gambling. It wasn't because of, people need to realize that just like a good fairy tale, the Bible has other meaning and needs to be seen in the light of what we live in today. And it's time to flip tables. It's time to bring truth to light, because if you want to be honest, there's a lot of people using the churches for things that shouldn't be used for.
Absolutely. Maybe we should call this series Flipping Tables.
That one's already taken. Not by me, by the girl I was telling you about. She has a podcast called Flipping Tables. That's fire. Not that I would recommend another podcast on your podcast, but equally it's good.
I know, I do that all the time. I always tell people books.
So Flipping Tables is phenomenal. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to look into it. But no, thank you so much, Jennifer, for, speaking on part one. Stay tuned, because there's a lot more parts to your story that we're going to really deep dive more onto, Jack Patterson. There might be a little bit of, John Ross, all of it.
We tie a lot of things in. So
yeah, honestly, I'm really proud of both of us, how we are really doing this whole series and how we actually, fun facts, guys, if you don't follow me on social media, me and Jennifer actually met in person, and that was something, and I will put some clips in there from our meetup.
yes,
It was so fun, and I love doing that because, again, I want people to understand, like, my mission is to create friendships, but also like exposing and stuff. And it was so nice to like actually meet you, because like that just changes. Like once you like meet someone in person, like you just like, you know, like definitely for this. And so it was so fun. And I'll put some funny clips because I have quite a few.
I have no doubt. I'm a little bit nervous to see just how funny, but equally I'm excited. And we're going to do it again soon because we live close. So that's amazing.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah, no, when I found that out, it was like, so yeah, no, stay tuned for next week's episode for more of Jennifer's story and part 2. And I'm really, you know, looking forward to hearing the feedback.
yeah.
And yeah, I'm just so excited. So thanks for speaking on today's episode.
Absolutely. I'm excited to do more.
Yeah, no, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Absolutely. Great.